I'm here in the 5.0, actually into the scope of damage. How do I know I'm in the scope of damage? You can see that I have from the scope of damage over here on the left-hand side on the claims enclosure tree is highlighted, which thus brings me up to the area listing screen. As you can see, I have master group and a group 1, living room, dining room, kitchen, pantry, bedrooms 1, 2, hall, bath, and room 10. Okay, so I'm going to come up in here and start my estimate. I'm going to go into the living room. And from the living room here, we are going to make a simple little flood claim for this room. Our goal is that we can use this same scope progressively on all our estimates. So for example, if you do a lot of flood, you're going to know that you're going to be doing the same items over and over and over again. Why don't we just put that into a macro and then play that macro when needed? Okay, so there's two different types of macros that we're going to be talking about. The first macro is going to be a typical room, meaning we're going to make up all the line items and then we're going to make a macro for that room, for that scope. The second type of macro is going to be an assembly. That means we're going to take little snippets of line items. Basically, for example, we could do remove and replace carpeting. Well, when we do that, we have to do a 1 and a 2 to account for the waste, as well as the pad. So that's what I mean by an assembly, just taking just the line items needed. And then with that, we can assemble our estimate by just using these assemblies. Okay. So basically what the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start a simple flood loss cleanup. So I'm going to come up here and click on my flood loss cleanup and hit scope number 9. So the first thing in making a macro is you have to define your scope. So that's what we're going to be doing now. I'm going to come over here to my water remediation and I'm going to come on over to mildewcide floor treatment. Come over to my mildewcide wall treatment and click scope number 9. Now this is what I do is I'll come over here and on the mildewcide of the walls, I don't do full height. I'll do pretty much up to where I do drywall. So in this case, I only had a foot of water in the risk, so I'm going to hit 4 foot. So now I'm going to come over here and then come down to my air movers, and then I'm going to hit scope number 9. Remember that scope number 9 is a pick item shown. Okay, so it does not show our scopes from remove through scope number 9, as you can see here, remove, replace. It does not put that description in our estimate. Now, something that you need to be aware of when you're doing air movers, you need to put in the quantity because we do it by day. So for example, if we had 2 air movers for this room and we have to do 5 days, what's 5 times 2 is 10. So I'm going to put in 10 as a quantity. And so when I do that, I come over here like this and say 2 air movers for 5 days. Okay, so once I have that in there, I can now come over here to my dehumidifier, click on scope number 9, and pick 5. So that's 1 dehu for this room for 5 days. Remember to comment this out so that the examiner knows what you're paying for. Real simple. Now I'm going to move on to my carpeting per square yard. So on this, I'm going to do a second level item, and I'm going to select Berber, and from that I'm going to go to the third level to do premium grade. So my description is going to read premium grade Berber carpeting. Take my mouse, and I'm going to select 1. As you can see, places it down here with the word remove as the method of operation. Select 2. It says replace premium grade Berber carpeting. So you can see that the scope numbers are representing a method of operation for your estimate. Now with that, this is just preliminary estimating here, but what you could do is you always want to collect your spec because you want to know what you're paying for. So basically here, I've got my spec up here. It says labor cost of demo in a non-salvage condition. Cost includes breakout of items and placing the pile on site. No labor to load, hauling cost, or dump fees. So remember that this is telling you that you're going to have to account for a dump fee to the dump. I'm going to come over here and select scope number 2. What that is that's the replace side. And with that, it says cost includes premium grade Berber carpeting, tack strips, hot melt and tape, on seams, and professional installation. Pad is not included. So what you need to do is we still need to add the pad. So I'm going to come up here instead of going to find it the old-fashioned way. Excuse me. I'm going to click on pad, and then it'll find pad for carpet per square yard. Select it. Takes me right to it. Then I can use scope number 3. As you can see, this has changed a little bit. It used to be an orange color. Now it's green. So that's one of the changes within the 5.0, is to show you that a line item is in an existing level. You need to check and see if there's a green on that. Alrighty. So now that I've got my carpeting, I'm going to go to my wall items. For my wall items, I'm going to come to my insulation. 2 schools of thought on here is that I could put my insulation on my exteriors for all the exterior walls. That's what most adjusters do, is they'll do a perimeter in an area and call it perimeter or exterior walls, and then from that they can just hit R&R insulation at 4 foot high and be done with it. And that's probably the best way of doing it. I'm going to pop on down to our wall dried, taped, and floated. Now this has been changed from the description from the original 4.0. We used to just have regular drywall. Now we have changed that to wall drywall, taped, and floated. Okay, so as you can see, there used to be a plus plus on the wall drywall with dimple finish. That's been replaced. There used to be plus plus. So that was a 25% embedded price within the system. That has been taken out and replaced by wall drywall with a dimple finish. So we just added a higher base finish on there. So what I'm going to do here is do scope number 3. Click scope 3. It brings it up. And you can see remove and replace drywall, taped, and floated. I'm going to hit the down arrow and select the height of 4 foot high. Then I'm going to paint it. Now, another thing that we need to be aware of is that when we do paint, we have to allow for a sealed wall or a primer coat. What I'm going to do is come down to here where it says paint walls, hit the down arrow, and under that you'll see seal walls. So from that, click scope number 9, and to seal the walls. And what I do is wherever drywall has been replaced, I will seal the walls to that replacement. So in this case, it's going to be 4 foot high. Let's take a look how our estimate is progressing. Click on list. As you can see, I'm bringing it in. I got flood loss cleanup, dehumidifier. I've got half-inch drywall that was in there existing. If I need to delete it, select delete, click yes. Nice and easy. If you make a mistake, you can then go to list mode, and the easiest way to correct that action to delete is mark it, right click on it, and then delete. So you can see I did the drywall at 4 foot high. I got 432, got 864 for the paint, and my seal walls are at 432. I'm going to go back to my VSS, go to my moldings and trim, do a 3 and a 7, and I'm ready for my doors. In this case, I'll do a pre-hung HC door, doing a 3 and a 7. So when I click up to my list mode, I've got pretty much everything that I needed for that room, dealing with a flood at about 1 foot high. I don't have to worry about my electrical outlets on there because it didn't go up that high. So basically here is my scope of damage. I'm ready to go. And I want to create a macro with this. Okay, so when I create the macro, it will remember this scope or schema. So this is what I'm going to do. is I'm going to mark it all. It's real easy to mark it because what you're going to do is take your mouse and left click the first one. This is a standard Windows convention, means that you can do this operation on a lot of different programs. Same thing for us. We mark the first item, we hold the shift key, and we go to the last item, and everything in the middle is going to be dark blue. Okay, so what we're doing now is making a macro up for this type of schema or scope so that we can put this in memory and use it for all times. So now that I have that all selected, I'm going to come up here to my main menu, not the ribbon that says macro, because that's only a play only. Come up to our main menu, click on macros, select record macro. And what you want to do when you name your macros is try to actually easily give it a name that can easily identify what's in the macro. So what I do is I call it flood. And then what I'll do is put in, for example, typical room, bedroom. And then I'm going to say less than 4 foot. With CPT and dry for drywall and HC door. So that kind of gives me an idea what I'm going to be paying for. So once I have that selected, I click on done. Now that macro is now recorded in your system and you can now use that macro forever. I wanted to give you some rules on macros. And what macros will do, it has no bearing on price. And that's a good thing because what happens is we take pricing updates every quarter. So it has no bearing on price. So if I come up and I click on this macro, it's not going to be associated to a price at all. All it does is it picks the scope for me. So whatever GMT or whatever pricing table that you have invoked at the time for this associated to this claim, it's going to give you that price. So that's a really good thing on running macros. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on done and I'm going to create a brand new area. So I'm going to come over here to living room, click on area, and I'm going to call it bedroom 3. So as I do that, I'm going to put a nice easy dimension in 20 by 20 so we can do the math and you can see what the 4 foot high would be. So now that I have that, I click on scope, and when I go to list, there's nothing in my list mode right now. I'm now ready to run the macro. Watch what I do here. Take my mouse, click on the button I told you not to push, which is going to be a play macro only. Click on it. I'm going to go down to my bottom of the macro list, which is right here, flood typical bedroom, less than 4 foot, carpet drywall, HC door. So when I click on this and select done, it will give me a macro. It'll stop at your first line item is what it is. The window that comes up is going to be the macro run window. It's going to stop at the first line item, in this case, flood loss cleanup. What you want to do is always click on process all macros and use in the original heights. And that's what we want to do because we want to retain the 4 foot high. So when I click on accept, it will then stop at anywhere that it can't figure out what a quantity is going to be. So in this case, it's asking me on this, how many air movers do I want to use? In this case, I can put in 6. So I can come over here, 6. Click on done. I'll put the note in later. On the dehumidifiers, I'll put in 3. So as you can see, it instantly ran my macro. What I want to call attention to is that using the macro, where you have remove and replace drywall taped and floated, if you can see, I have 320 as a quantity. Okay, let's see if that's at 4 foot high. Yes, it is. Let's see that my paint and finish is going to be full height. It's at 640. Yes, it is. Full height. And then on my seal walls, it went up to 4 foot high as well. So you can see how fast this can assist you in doing your estimate. So it did a typical room very easily that we would use all the time in flood, dealing with flood cleanup all the way down to our pre-hung HC door. So what I want to do now is I want to open it up for questions. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and then we're going to discuss this topic.
Do you mind just opening up a line item so we can see the what those numbers, the definitions
Absolutely. Let's go back up to, if you recall, the dehumidifier for water loss. If I click on that, it does not retain the user note. See, it's not a copy. It's just like you picking that scope number and finding, basically the macro goes and hunts and finds those scope numbers that you want to put in. Once it's selected, you still have to put in the user notes. So in this case, if I have a dehumidifier of water loss, so if I put in 3 days, 1 unit, I still have to go back, check it, make sure that's the note that I want. The pricing comes in from the pricing table that you have in your estimate. Okay, so what the claim, when we set the claim up, you applied a pricing table. So that's where all the prices come in from that pricing table. So as you click on the scope number, it applies the price as well as the description and the quantity.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so it's a very misconception. Everybody says they think of it as they think macros are a copy. They are not. It just remembers the scope that you put in memory and then recall that scope at any time for an area. That's how simple it is for macros, but it will save you countless time when you're trying to find these items. Okay, well, let's get to David's question, and his question is, I need to make an edit to this macro. So basically what I'm going to do is just go back to my VSS, and I'm going to come down to my doors residential, and basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to add some bifold doors. So once I click on the bifold door, I'm going to do a 3 and a 7. Remember that my macro was set to bedroom. So basically what I want to do is add what I want to put in, make sure it's correct. So I always go to list mode. And when I'm in the list mode, I'm going to reselect from flood loss cleanup down now to the paint and finish bifold door. So when I left click on that, everything turns dark blue. I'm going to come up to the main menu and click record macro. Now, instead of giving a new name, I'm going to reference the same name. So I'm going to go all the way down, flood typical bedroom, less than 4 foot, drywall HC, door. And once I put that in, click on done. Now that macro has been updated. So when I click on done here, say that I'm going to do a study, and let's say my study does have those bifold doors. I'm going to click on new area, call it study, put in a dimension, put in a height, and I can put in a closet, but for simplicity, sake, just to make sure that the 4 foot high is correct, I'm going to leave it off for right now. Click on scope, bring it up, run my macro. Remember that I picked the macro up, click on done. Remember I told you to click on process all macros. When I select it, click on accept. It's going to ask, remember the air movers. Let's say that I want to put in 6 air movers, sorry. 3. Remember, I still have to put that note in. Now, when I click on the list, do I have my bifold doors? And yes, I do, from that same macro name. The next thing I'll be talking about is going to be we call is an assembly macro. Okay, that means I can take different parts within a scope and name that, and I can actually create a scope by using assemblies. So in this case, I'm going to make a couple of the assemblies. I'm going to say flood cleanup macro, which I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say flood loss cleanup. And I'm using my control key now to actually make these assemblies up. Before I use the shift key, which grabs everything, I do not want to grab every item within this area. So to make an assembly macro, I'm going to call this flood loss cleanup type of macro. I'm going to hit the flood loss cleanup, the mill to side, floor, walls, air movers, and dehues. That's it. So I'm going to grab that one and make sure that all those line items are selected. Come up to the macros, record macro, so you can see the pattern there. And I'm just going to call this flood loss cleanup. I have one already in there, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it flood loss cleanup and hit done. Now, I can continue on by coming up and saying I want to do a premium grade Berber carpeting macro. That's called another assembly. So I'm picking the premium grade. I'm going to do a 1, a 2, plus the pad. So those are the only 3 items that I want. So I'm going to do the remove and replace the premium grade Berber carpeting along with its pad. Come up here to macro, record, and I'm going to say R and R, carpeting, but I'm also going to say premium grade Berber carpeting. Premium carpeting, premium Berber with pad. The more information that you can give on your macro, the better it's easy to identify to run it. So now I'm clicking done. Now I have my drywall. I'm picking up the remove and replace drywall at 4 foot high. I've got the paint and finish. I've got the seal walls. Now that I have that marked, I'm going to do a macro. I'm going to do a record macro. I'm going to say R and R drywall 4 foot with paint. So now I can click on that. And let me put this with seal. And click on done. Now that I've got that done, I can now come up and do my doors. So if I have my pre-hung door and then hit my macro, record macro, and give it a name. And so on and so on. So let's see how I can use the assemblies in my estimate. So I'm going to click on done, create a new area. Create a new area, doing the length, clicking scope. As you can see, I have nothing in my areas. Now I'm going to assemble this room with macros using that assemblies. Come up to macro, go to play, and what I'm doing here is doing flood loss cleanup. So I come up here and I look for my flood loss cleanup. I think that's what I named it, flood loss cleanup with air. There we go. How many days for the air mover? How many for the DHU? And there it is. That was an older app macro. So I've got that in there. I've got my flood loss cleanup, mill to side floor, wall, air mover, and DHU. Come back into it. Run the next macro. In this case, R&R drywall or R&R carpeting with Berber with pad. Select it. There it is. Run the next macro. In this case, it's going to be the drywall with the seal. and then I'll finish it up with the doors. And that's how easy it is to actually make up a room. So what you could do is you can make up numerous different combinations of assemblies, bring it in, tailored to what your scope notes are out there in the field. So very easy to use the assembly macro. All right, what we're going to be talking about next, I'm going to meet you all here, and we're going to go into the next topic.
Muted.
Okay, what I'm doing here is now we've got some line items in there. We need to actually tweak our estimate. And what we could do here is we can use one of the most powerful features, and it's going to be called global. And it's associated to the area listing screen, which you can see right here. So when I click on global, how do I know that I'm in global mode? Take a look right up here. It says virtual scope sheet global mode. That's your indication. It used to be a dark red or a red color background. On this ribbon bar right here, that has been taken out. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tweaking our estimate because we're going to be adding, editing, and deleting our estimate for one area, all areas, or selected areas. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is, as you can see, that our global mode is exactly the same thing as the VSS mode. Okay. In a sense it is. But basically it has one more option. It can actually select one area, all areas, or any area that you wish to apply it to, so multiple areas. So the first thing that I would like to bring to light here is you see that we have a scope number 9 and a green tick mark. In the old 4.0 system, it was identified with a yellow, okay, a yellow. And we've changed the color, so now it's green. And for example here, anything that you see with a green tick mark means that this line item is somewhere in your estimate. We don't know where until we click on it, but it's somewhere in your estimate. So in this case, I can come up here to flood loss cleanup, hit scope number 9, and as you can see, it brings up the global edit override screen. And when we do this, it shows all the items or all the areas in your estimate. Now I'm going to hit clear for just a second. By default, it brings up every item to be marked, but I'm going to clear it to show you something. See how I have living room that's bolded, dining room, but the kitchen and pantry is not? Okay, so that tells me that the kitchen and pantry does not have the flood loss cleanup, but the living room, dining room, 3, study, and living room 2 does. So if I just want to update wherever flood loss cleanup was, instead of 33 cents, I want to put in 40 cents. I can do this very simply by putting 40 cents in. And now I have to make sure that it's all selected though, because I unselected it. That's still primary. Is that wherever is dark blue, it's gonna, if it is affected, it's going to update it. So in this case, I'm putting 40 cents in, and it's only going to update the living room, dining room, or wherever this flood loss cleanup is, simply taking my mouse and clicking update. When I click OK, you can see the result down here and what the impact is on the loss. Okay, so it's only going to update living room, dining room, bedroom 1, 2, bedroom 3, study, and living room 2. How do I know? Click on clear. As you can see, those are the bolded items. That's where that line item is. Also, what you can do is kind of neat, is that you can come up and put a user note in to apply that as well. So I can say, okay, so now that I can put a note in, I can then update that by hitting select all, Now clicking update is going to place that note also associated in the estimate. I also have other areas that other field boxes that I can actually update. I'm going to click on done, and I'm going to go to another line item. In this case, I'm going to come down and go into my wall items. So if I come over here to my wall items, click on it, as you can see, I have some wall insulation in there as well. I'm going to come over here to wall drywall, taped and floated. I've got a 1, a 2, and a 3. You might get this scenario because in one area you might have done a 1 and 2, but in another area you might have hit scope 3. So to identify that where we used 1 and 2, we could take our mouse and click scope 2, and it's going to only be applied to the dining room. How do I know it's in the dining room? It's going to be a bold and with a star on either side. If I need to make my change to the replace of drywall, taped and floated just for that one line item, make it 115, and then I can then hit update, and once I do that, it'll add that for me. Okay. All right. So I can also put depreciation, percentage of quantity in as well. I can come down here to scope number 3. As you can see, there's other items that are using the remove and replace drywall, taped and floated. That's only going to be applied to the living room, bedroom 3, study, and living room 2. So basically, if I need to associate living room, dining room, kitchen, pantry, bedroom 1, 2, 3, hall, bath, and 10, or room 10, very easy to do, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reselect it. So I'm going to hit select all, make sure all of it's all selected. I'm going to come up here and it's $1.55. Let's say that I want to do $1.76. And at this time, I also want to add depreciation of 10%. I want to make my height of damage to 4 foot. So as you can see, I'm adding, and I'm going to put a note in. So I said damage by water allowed 4 foot high replacement. So now that I have that in there, I can't use the update because I want this to be applied to other areas. So in this case, I'm going to use add. So when I click on add, click OK. It says it's now what's doing is identifying new areas. It says, hey, I found that item in living room. Update this item. That means it's going to go to the living room and it's going to go to bedroom 3, study, and living room 2. I'm going to say yes, 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 and done. So now that $1.76 is going to be associated to my living room, dining room, wherever is marked in dark blue. If I would like to get rid of the 1 and 2, because I already applied the scope 3, watch this trick. I can come up in here to scope 1, and what I'm going to do is just hit delete. Click on the done button, go to scope 2, hit the delete. So now, wherever 1 and 2 has now been removed. So when I come up and click done, and I go into the dining room, which if you recall, that's where it was, click on list, I should only have for remove and replace wall drywall taped and floated, and then I've got my paint and finish drywall and floated. So you can see that I've got that in there, and I've added it from my global. If you recall, it's $1.76. So the global worked. It applied the price, added or deleted wherever it was needed, just by using the global mode. All right. One thing I want to show you about global that's really important. I don't know if you've ever ran into this scenario, but if you go into global, okay, and I pick, for example, carpeting per square yard. And I'm from the carpeting per square yard, I'm going to go down to premium grade Berber carpeting. As you can see, I can pick it up visually by that green tick mark on the down arrow. In this case, I'm talking about depreciation on the premium grade Berber carpeting. And basically, I'm going to change the depreciation. Let me just leave the depreciation alone here. But let's do this. Let's say that I picked the wrong model when you created the claim. You know, in the Flood Wizard, you hit homeowners by mistake. By default, homeowners is going to make your carpeting full replacement cost. Now, is that allowed in the flood world? Joe Ray, do you know?
Oh,
Yeah, so we need to make that unrecoverable depreciation for all the areas where it's located, correct? So what you could do if you run into that scenario, you can come right up here to RC depreciation. Does everybody see this? This is a very important button right here. So it's RC depreciation. I'm going to click on it. I can mark it all non-recoverable wherever this carpeting is and click OK. And in one click, I have just made that carpeting all unrecoverable. Did you see how powerful that feature could be? Is there any questions on that? So with my global, I can actually target certain line items that can be recoverable or non-recoverable depreciation. And I can put it in from one area, all areas, or selected areas. So that's why global is so important. I'm going to click on the Done button, and I want to show you a last feature that we're going to be talking about, and it's going to be called Haggle. When I click on the Done button and I go to the total page, select it, it brings me to my total page. I can now use the button called Haggle. When I do this, this is almost like a contractor's punch list. When I click on the estimate summary, it's going to tell me flood loss cleanup is going to be so much quantity. My mildewcide is going to be so much quantity. So what I have the ability to do is I can export that in an Excel spreadsheet right to the contractor, which is beneficial for him because he knows how much that he has to buy. For example, if he needed to buy premium grade Berber carpeting, it's going to be 181.6 square yards. Actually, it's going to be 194.3 because it'd be the replacement side. Okay, so this is very beneficial. Another thing that's nice about Global is that I can target quantities very easily. So if I was looking for my doors, as you can see here, it tells 4 doors, pre-hung HC door. Let's say that there were 6 doors because I had a closet in there. I could double click, go to the room, let's say bedroom 3, and select 2 doors. Very easy to change right now. And let's say that this door here is not $120, but it's $135. So as you can see that I can update my door counts or my quantity counts very easy and also change the price within the Haggle system. That is like awesome. Very easy to make changes. That's called Haggle. And if I want to click on an export spreadsheet, I'm going to click on it. And then I can open that up. If I need to print it, I can make it to a PDF. I'm just going to click it to the print preview, and this is what the contractor would get. So as you can see, Haggle is a very powerful little tool. Okay, that concludes this web seminar for the advanced features. We covered the macros, global, and the Haggle.